election was supposed to be about a carbon tax. It was the most hated thing Trudeau had done to us in his decade as prime minister. And no one doubted that Pierre Poilievre was truly against it. It was a huge political winner for him. But then Mark Carney came along and in his first act as party leader reduced the tax rate of the carbon tax to zero. Now understand the trick here though. He didn't repeal the tax. I'm not sure that he could, given that Parliament hasn't sat in months. Carney had a bit of theater, that's all, where he signed a fancy-looking piece of paper as if he were President Trump signing an executive order. Remember this?
Sure.
Yeah, except that in Canada, the Prime Minister doesn't sign executive orders. The Governor General does, on advice of the Prime Minister. I don't think Mark Carney knows how we do it. He's been out of Canada so long. But my point is, Mark Carney did not abolish the tax. He didn't repeal it. He didn't remove it. He didn't root it out. He just turned the amount down to zero for now. And if you remember what he said, it's not that he disagrees with it suddenly. He just said it was divisive, as in it could be a political problem for him right now. So when he thinks it won't cause him a political problem, he'll be able to turn it up like a thermostat or something. Of course he will. I mean, carbon taxes aren't just Carney's favorite policy. They're really part of his identity. It's what he's done for the past decade. It's what his wife had lobbied for. The job he had at the UN, his reason for jetting around the world, going to the World Economic Forum, it was all about global warming, carbon taxes, transitioning off oil, etc. He was the co-chair of something called the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, GFANZ. It's a terrible acronym, but basically it meant he jetted around the world, pressuring companies to decarbonize and threatening them with divestment if they didn't cooperate. That's why he was interrogated by the U.S. Congress last year for allegedly extorting companies to comply with his green policies or be targeted for divestment. Now he's going to do that to our entire country. So yeah, if you think Mark Carney is opposed to carbon taxes, you just haven't been listening to him. He knows he needs to turn it down to zero for this election, but just for this election. I mean, what kind of grown-up says they are a follower of Greta Thunberg, the high school, the junior high dropout?
I see myself as part of the social movement. I think those at the vanguard of the social movement might see me as being farther behind. And I've, absolutely full credit, and I do in the book, to Greta Thunberg, who I've had the pleasure of meeting several times, and who absolutely has catalyzed that movement, the youth movement, and also done something incredibly valuable. And this is embarrassing to admit, but I think we should admit it. And this is often true, by the way, in finance. Very obvious truths are not fully understood in the system. So what she hammered home was the carbon budget, how small it was, how rapidly it was being depleted. And we've moved in a few short years, in part because of her, from a world of ESG, sustainability, broader conversations around, as I say, sustainability, to a relentless focus on net zero. It's called the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero for a reason, because we've moved to the relentless logic of having to get emissions down consistent with the carbon budget. So in that regard, I'm part of that and part of mapping what people want to the mechanisms, particularly in finance, in order to deliver it. I'm also, though, conscious that of two other things, Lionel. One is that, of course, net zero it's absolutely essential to stabilize the climate, but that's not the same thing as protecting biodiversity. It's not the same thing as having a just transition along the way. There are lots of other elements that are necessary to this that these broader social movements rightly shine a light on.
Either an unserious man or an extremely serious, extremely dangerous man. But the media was delighted by it, which is surprising. I mean, the media had said that anyone who was against carbon taxes was against the future and against our children and a threat to the society, and it was disqualifying for any conservative who dared to defy the net zero cult. I mean, entire election debates in this country were about carbon taxes, but I guess when a liberal turns it off, those worries go away. It was an issue until it suddenly wasn't an issue when they wanted to get their man elected. Where's the David Suzuki Foundation? Where's all the green activists? Where's Greta herself? Where's Stephen Guilbeault? They all know it's just a ruse. Carney is their man, and they simply need him to get him across the finish line. And he's the same on everything else that Trudeau stood for, from massive foreign aid to being supportive of Hamas to censoring free speech for critics to being reflexively anti-American. But Mark Carney has three big things going for him. Number one, he reduced the carbon tax to zero, even if it's just temporary. Number two, he is not Justin Trudeau, so a lot of the hatred for Trudeau is dissipated. By the way, has anyone even asked, does anyone even care what Trudeau's up to now? That makes my point. No one cares. He was such an empty shell. And the third thing that Mark Carney has going for him is that the NDP has utterly collapsed, all falling away towards the Liberals. That's probably the biggest factor. You know, I just went on Wikipedia. They have a page that lists all the public opinion polls from all the public opinion pollsters in chronological order. So in the past 3 days, April 20, 21, and 22, you can check this for yourself, there have been 10 polls published. And the Conservative Party in those polls ranges from a low of 36.3 in a Nanos poll to a high of 41 in a Main Street poll. Now, it doesn't really work to average them all because there's different sample sizes and different methodologies, but I did it anyways. And the average of the last 10 polls for the Conservatives is 38.5%. That's pretty good. That's only down a few points from their all-time high when the Liberals were imploding under Trudeau. Liberal Party, same thing. Last 10 polls, they average 42.7% by my math. So for sure, they are leading by 4 points. But so much of that is from the NDP, which is averaging just 8.2% in the last 10 polls. The NDP are in single digits. They are about to get wiped out. I mean, possibly not even getting party status. It's a Unite the Left campaign. By the way, the People's Party of Canada, Maxime Bernier's party, is averaging about 1.5% in the polls. And I got to tell you, I will never understand why Maxime Bernier didn't even try to get into the leaders' debate this year. Why didn't he even ask, let alone sue? I don't know. So yeah, it looks like a Liberal win. There are 6 more days, though. Voting has started already, and I don't know if you saw, Elections Canada says there has been record turnout so far in the advanced polls. Now, I don't know which party that could benefit. I could see both sides. I think a lot of Canadians are desperate to get rid of the Liberals, and they don't want another Liberal term. So I think they're motivated. But there's also a lot of leftists who are delighted to have a chance to stop Poilievre and genuinely believe they're somehow fighting against Donald Trump by voting for Carney. And the younger voters are the most pro-Poilievre, according to pollsters. Older voters are the most pro-Carney, and they seem to have a higher turnout. Seniors vote more than, say, people in their 20s. I don't know what high numbers means. I think a lot of Canadians have bought the line that Pierre Poilievre is a mini Trump. The media has weaponized that like never before. They know this is their one chance. But let me show you one more thing. This is a series of tweets by David Coletto. As you know, he's my favorite pollster, who's also one of the most accurate when comparing their polls to the election day results. I think he's very conscientious. Here's what David Coletto, the pollster for Abacus, wrote yesterday on X. He said, what if the Liberals never really led by like 8 to 12 points and it was just response bias? Now, I Googled response bias. I wanted to make sure I understood what it meant. It's when people say something to a pollster that they don't really mean because there's some other force at play, like people telling pollsters what they think is a socially acceptable answer, sort of peer pressure. They want to say the right thing to the person on the other side of the phone. Or maybe just, for example, people who are Poilievre supporters are less willing to talk to pollsters than liberal voters are. That's an example of response bias. Whenever I get a pollster on the phone, I assume it's a trick or a trap or someone posing as a pollster. I just hang up. I mean, that's not me really being a conspiracy theorist. That's just me valuing my privacy and distrusting the political class, and I'm not going to spend the time on it. Maybe that makes me a hypocrite because I love reading polls, but I'm not going to participate in one. That's response bias. Anyways, that's what Coletto suggested there. And then he wrote this too, and I thought this was very candid for a pollster to say. He said, To go from a 15-point Liberal lead a month ago to a 2-point one today is pretty remarkable. If you believe that, then you also have to believe, one, the Liberals have run a horrible campaign, two, the Conservatives have run an amazing campaign. In other words, Coletto is saying it's more likely that the polls were wrong a month ago, or are wrong now, then the mood of the country has swung so much. Now, I don't know. I think there was a euphoria at removing Trudeau, just like there was in the States when Joe Biden was kicked out for Kamala Harris. And that rejuvenated the left that was demoralized. And in Canada, it united the left also, wiped out the NDP. But I think a number of centrists probably got caught up in that, and probably their anti-Trump instincts were inflamed. Now, Trump hasn't taken a shot at Canada or mentioned annexing us in the last few weeks. The Trump effect is subsiding a bit. I don't know, but I think the election is still afoot. I mean, look at this. The government says 7.3 million people have voted already, a new record for this point of the election cycle. It was just 5.8 million last time at this point. But this seems like a more momentous election than last one, doesn't it? Anyways, I said I'd look at policy. So here's the Conservative official policy platform. It was released today. If you scroll down it, you'll see about 32 different boxes representing 32 different policies. First one is reducing income tax by 15%. By the way, scrapping the carbon tax is on the list too. They say for real, for good, in contrast to Carney. Cutting the sales tax on homes and reducing capital gains tax. In fact, the first 6 points are all related to relieving taxes and fees. The next three are ramping up energy projects and other industrial projects, including oil and gas. Lots about crime and reviving the military. So that's the website version. But they have a larger written version of the platform, and I'm so glad I reviewed it because it talks about some things that are not on the online version. Here, I'm going to read the entire platform of immigration. I'll just read it word for word. Restore order to immigration. Under the last Conservative government, Canada had an immigration system that worked. It was fair, orderly, and the envy of the world. But after the lost Liberal decade, that system is broken. The Liberals' reckless and unsustainable immigration surge overwhelmed Canadian housing and healthcare services. We will restore integrity to the system by cracking down on fraud and dramatically reducing the number of temporary foreign workers and foreign students, and limiting permanent immigration to a sustainable rate similar to the levels under the Harper government. We will prioritize those who are most needed, who grow our economy and meet our healthcare needs, and rebuild an immigration system that works for newcomers and Canadians alike. And then he's got a few bullet points. He says, we will keep the rate of population growth below the rate of housing growth, job growth, and healthcare accessibility to ensure sustainable immigration levels that are fair for Canadians and newcomers alike. I think that's a good one. Reject the radical Liberal Century Initiative proposal to grow Toronto to a city of 33.5 million, Montreal to a city of 12.2 million, Vancouver to a city of 11.9 million, Calgary, Edmonton to cities of 15.5 million, and Ottawa-Gatineau to a city of 4.8 million within a single lifetime. I know that sounds insane. That really is the platform of the Century Initiative that Mark Carney's team signed on to.